Ladies
and gentlemen,
the Ford Motor Company would like you to see the new styling, the new features of the beautiful new Edsel.
Good morning, everybody. Luke here again with another Edsel video for you. About 3 weeks ago, I posted a video of this 1959 Edsel Corsair. I said it was the first time it had been driven in about 40 years. And I believe that to be accurate. Now, that was just me putzing around the yard with it. Nothing really spectacular. But here's what I've done since that video. So in the past 3 weeks, I've gone through, cleaned out the fuel system, turned the brake drums, new brake pads, new brake lines, new brake hoses, new tires, brand new white wall tires put on it. All that jazz. You know, it kind of sounds like Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters when he says, oh, all it needs is new brake shocks, brake pads, transmission work, yada, 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 all that fun jazz. But I just thought I'd give you a little bit more of an in-depth view of this car because I'm going to try and take it to town today to flush the transmission in it, change the oil, do a compression test, all that fun jazz. Everybody makes it out like doing a classic car is so fun, which it is, and they also make it look easy, but it's not. So here, I'll give you an in-depth view of this car. So this is a 1959 Edsel Corsair two-door hardtop. This particular car was manufactured on October 21st, 1958 in the Louisville, Kentucky Ford plant. Now, this car was the 3,032nd car to roll off the line for 1959. Now, the Corsair was the top of the line model for Edsel in the 1959 year. The prior year, the 1958s, you know, they didn't do so well. They kind of garnered all those names. They said that the front end looked like an Oldsmobile sucking on a lemon or worse. Just going to leave it at the or worse. Not going to go into what the or worse was. You can look that one up on your own. So for 1959, Ford needed to cut costs because they were losing so much money. They anticipated selling around 200,000 cars per year. They ended up selling about 60 the first year. So sales fell drastically. They way overhyped the car. And it wasn't a bad car. It was either a Ford or a Mercury counterpart. The parts basically interchanged. They had some quality issues because they manufactured the Edsel on the same line as the Fords or the Mercury, so they'd have to stop Mercury production or Ford production, bring in the Edsel parts, make the Edsel. So they were cutting costs. So the first year they offered several series. They offered 4 series the first year: the Ranger, the Pacer, the Corsair, and the Citation. The Citation being the top of the line. They also offered their station wagon models based on either the Mercury or the Ford platforms. So what they did is they cut the Pacer line, the Citation line. They got rid of their round-up station wagons. And what they had left for 1959 in their trimmed-down Edsel year, they had the, I got to remember here, they had the Ranger, the Corsair, and the Villager. Villager being the station wagon, Ranger being the bottom of the line. The Corsair was to be the top of the line Edsel for 59. You know, it kind of fill that price gap between Ford and Mercury to compete around with Oldsmobile, Pontiac, those brands. In doing so, they basically Forded up this car. What do I mean? They made it look less like an Edsel, more like a Ford. They basically went to sharing all parts with only Fords, no more Mercury counterparts. So for this car, a lot of the bottom of the car, some of the sheet metal shared with the Fords. Has a very beautiful side scallops on it and has a very distinctive rear end. You'll never mistake an Edsel for anything else. You'll just think, what the heck just passed me on the road? Now, and that's the thing I'd like to point out. They made Edsel out to be such this bad car. Everybody just hounded it. Well, it was no worse than a Ford. Cars had plenty of power. The Edsel introduced a lot of new things. It introduced the self-adjusting brakes, introduced a lot of other modern conveniences, push button transmission. You know, a lot of them hounded Edsel for their push button transmission. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world either. Dodge was doing it years before Ford tried to do it, but Edsel just did it differently. They put the buttons on the steering wheel, which they got rid of for 59. They're like, not a good idea. We're just gonna cheapen it up a little bit. So for 59, they made it look more like a Ford. Now, for this particular car here, going around it, most of it's red, it's got a black fender, it's missing half of its front bumper. Well, the car, I have to assume, was in an accident before it had been parked. The front bumper frame, right behind it, that support is bent. I have the bumper, it's in the trunk, it's just not on the car yet. And what I can say about this car is I purchased it in September of 2020 at the Glen Meacham auction down in Carlisle, Iowa. Now, I have to imagine that when Glenn bought this, he was going to drive it, he was going to use it, or he's just going to keep it in his collection. He purchased it in Avon, Iowa in 1973. It was a 14-year-old car. Since then, it was not re-registered. The original plates were last registered in 72. So it just kind of sat. And then I think, I have to imagine, that he was going to use this as a parts car, because on that same auction, there was another Edsel, a convertible, red and white, same color scheme. And this had been missing, not really a lot of chrome, but just some of the chrome around the front. I mean, there was spares in the trunk, so it wasn't really a big deal. But that's what I have to imagine. But the difference between this Corsair and the other one that was on the auction is this one runs now, it'll drive. Originally purchased, this car is just a base model bare bones Corsair. It came with no options. Does not have power steering. It does have power brakes. It did not come with electric windows, did not come with electric seats. Let's see what else. It did not come with the big motor. Now, that was another thing from 58. In 1958, they introduced two new motors. It's when Ford introduced the FE motor and the MEL motors to their lineup. What is the FE? Well, that's like a 390. In 1958, they introduced what they called the E400. The E400 was a 361 cubic inch FE block. Produced 400 foot-pounds of torque. It was quite a peppy motor. They also introduced the E475. That was a 410 MEL block. That was specific to Mercury, Edsel, and Lincolns. Now, that produced 475 foot-pounds of torque. They were quite powerful motors. They derided these cars so much, but their motors were the biggest invention that they had here. It was the greatest thing they had because it surpassed the Y block, surpassed the flathead. It created so much more power than the rest of the cars out there. Maybe not as much as a Dodge, but you know, it was up there. So for this car, bare bones, this was ordered in 59. Now in 59 they dropped the 475, the E475, the MEL 410, and all they kept was the 361, the E400. And they cheapened up the model line. They started introducing the Y block in the Ranger series. They called it the Ranger V8. They also introduced the Express V8, which was the 332. The 361 was no longer called the E400. It was called the Super Express. This model was ordered with the 332 cubic inch Express V8 mated with a 2-speed Mile-O-Matic transmission, which was Edsel specific. Now, when I got the car, it wasn't running. The motor was stuck. I took it apart, found one of the cylinders in it had been stuck. It was at the bottom of its exhaust stroke. Exhaust valve was open, cylinder was rusty. The block's still in okay shape. It can be repaired, but that is not what's in the car right now. And this does not have the 2-speed Mile-O-Matic in it. What I did instead, might anger some people who love Edsels, but I love Edsels too. If you love an Edsel more than me, I'd be surprised. In this car is a Y block engine. Now, Y blocks were offered in the 59 Edsel, but they were Ranger and Villager only. They were not sold in Corsairs. So that's the oddity of this car. It has a Y block, a 292. This specific Y block came out of a 1962 Ford F100 pickup. I got it from my grandpa. The block itself needed a minor overhaul. It does smoke a little bit, but you know what? What doesn't? The heads off of this and the transmission came out of a 1957 Ford Ranch wagon, so this now has a 4-Dematic transmission. This has a comparable drivetrain to a 1957 Ford put in this car. It still has plenty of power. It's okay. It has a little bit of pep, a little bit of smoke. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it'll go down the road. As said, I redid the brakes and everything on it. It's full of coolant, new hoses. Under the hood's been kind of refreshed. Gonna try and make it to Toronto on this. Still got the generator in it. Generator light comes on, so it's not really doing a whole lot for charging, just kind of holding. Got a gallon of gas and a Durex antifreeze jug. I guarantee that was not an option in 59. But we're gonna see how it goes. We're gonna try and make it to Toronto, see how it goes. So here we go. I'm probably gotta figure out how I'm gonna put my phone in here. Got about all the fluids you could possibly imagine in this car. Got a fire extinguisher just in case. Beautiful steering wheel, beautiful dash. Dash pad needs to be replaced, obviously. Missing the kick boards. Needs new carpet. The car is highly original. Interior is not in bad shape, but you know, it could use some help. I'm gonna see if I can put you up here. There's my Econoline sitting in the driveway. Some tractors in the background. But it should start right up. Now, I do not think the speedometer in this car works. It does not have seat belts. So we're gonna see how this goes. It is a little bit loud because it has no exhaust. We got 5 miles to go to make it to the shop in town. Hopefully we make it. I didn't bring extra gas. I'm driving gingerly because I know this thing likes gas. Temperature gauge is slowly going up. There's no gas in the tank, so the fuel gauge isn't reading anything. The clock works. The horns work. She's leaving a good smoke trail behind her, but I don't know a good car that doesn't. road in probably 40 years. The first one was my dad's 60 Ranger. Here's mile marker number 4. 2 miles to go. The person in the pickup ahead of me is thinking, what the heck is this thing coming up behind me? Well, it's an Edsel, sir. You can mark it in your calendar, probably the first time you ever seen one. There's mile marker 5. We're 1 mile to the shop. At this point, I could probably coast in. Sure, all the people at Toronto are going to like that I'm leaving a pretty good smoke trail behind me, but it'll take care of the mosquito problem. Going 30 miles an hour. Got a new speedometer gear. I'm going to try and put that in, see if that makes a difference. Otherwise, I'll probably just have to change the cable. It smokes, but it doesn't run bad. There it is. There's the shop coming up on the right. There's my cousin's Buick she got in an accident with about 3 years ago. It's been sitting there ever since. And there we go. Troy and Automotive, Muffler and Tire, Toronto, South Dakota. Well, if you like the video, like and subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, there's more cars. I'll keep posting more Edsel updates in the future.
Your pulse beats happy
when you drive an Edsel,
'cause you've got to drive it to feel what this great new car can do for you.
you know why?
It's a car designed around you. From the Ford family, a fine car.